I never imagined that love could hide a secret this deep. For 40 years, I believed my husband and I shared everything. Our laughter, our losses, our dreams. But one quiet morning, while trying to sell the only thing of value he left behind, I discovered a truth that shattered my life. My name is Gloria Harris, and I'm 65 years old. I live in a small, friendly town just outside Seattle, Washington. The kind of place where everyone waves when you drive by and the barista remembers your order before you say it. My husband, Charles Harris, passed away a month ago. Even now, when I wake up, I reach across the bed expecting to find his hand. Charles was my everything. My husband, my best friend, my compass. He was a respected immigration attorney, known for helping families find safety and a new beginning in America. People admired him. They used words like honorable and selfless. And they were right. Or at least, that's what I believed with every beat of my heart. The house feels different now. Quieter. There's this sound the refrigerator makes at night, a low hum that used to get drowned out by Charles's soft snoring. Now, it's the only thing that keeps me company. Our son, David, lives across town. He stops by every few days, making sure I've eaten, paying the utility bills online because, Mom, you still think emails are magic. I laugh, even when I don't feel like it, because that's what mothers do. Financially, things aren't easy. Charles left me the house, some savings, and his old antique safe. A family heirloom made of black steel with brass corners and an engraved lion emblem. It had belonged to his grandfather, who once ran a shipping company in Tacoma. Collectors had been calling for years, offering small fortunes, but Charles always said, "Some things aren't meant to be sold, Gloria, they hold stories." But stories don't pay medical bills, and lately, I've been getting calls from the bank. So, one drizzly Thursday morning, with rain tapping softly on the windows, I finally decided I'd sell the safe. The safe sat in the basement, tucked between old photo boxes and the smell of cedar. When I opened it, the hinges groaned, like a tired old man complaining about being disturbed. Inside were stacks of paper, a few legal files, and a neatly folded note in Charles's handwriting, "Tax receipts, 2019. I smiled. He was always so organized, so predictably neat. It almost felt like he'd walk down the stairs any second, holding his mug of black coffee, saying, "Be careful with that, sweetheart. The lock's tricky." I ran my hand across the cold metal surface, thinking how strange it was that I was touching something he'd touched hundreds of times. Grief does that, makes ordinary things feel sacred. Then, as I was cleaning the inner panel, my fingers brushed against a ridge, a thin line I hadn't noticed before. It didn't look like much, just a faint indentation along the bottom. I pressed it lightly, and something clicked. At first, I thought it was the hinge giving way. But then a small compartment slid open at the base, a hidden drawer no one had mentioned before. My heart skipped. Inside lay a sealed envelope and a black USB drive, both covered in dust. The envelope had one name written across it in blue ink, Maria. For a long moment, I just stared. Maria? I didn't know any Maria close enough to Charles to deserve her own envelope inside his most private safe. Was it a client? A friend? Someone he'd helped through work? The rain outside grew heavier, blurring the daylight. I felt my chest tighten, not with suspicion, but with something colder. Fear of the unknown. I almost placed everything back, locked the safe, and called the collector. Almost. But curiosity is a dangerous comfort. It whispers when logic says stop. I carried the envelope and the USB drive upstairs, set them on the kitchen counter, and poured myself a cup of coffee that went cold before I touched it. For nearly an hour, I just sat there, staring at those two objects like they could breathe. Then I reached for the envelope. Inside was a folded receipt for a bank safety deposit box, issued under Charles's name. No letter, no note. Just that. And the USB drive. I remember whispering to myself, "Charles, what is this?" The kitchen clock ticked, the rain slowed, and in that silence, something inside me shifted, a tiny crack in the picture of a perfect marriage. Still, I told myself it was nothing. Just business. Maybe a client's case. Maybe a donation. Because if I didn't believe that, then I'd have to believe something worse. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house felt like a whisper. At 2 a.m., I found myself sitting in front of Charles's old laptop, the USB drive trembling in my fingers. I plugged it in. A folder appeared, unnamed, plain, almost innocent. I clicked it open. There were dozens of files, letters, scanned papers, and photos. And right there on top, a file titled Eli's birth certificate. The room seemed to shrink around me. I clicked. My husband's name stared back at me. Father, Charles Harris. Mother, Maria Alvarez. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the soft tremor of my heartbeat. Outside, the rain had stopped. Inside, my world had just begun to fall apart. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there in the kitchen, the glow of the laptop screen spilling across the table like cold moonlight. I read the name again and again, Maria Alvarez. The woman's name printed under Mother. And Charles Harris, under Father. My husband's name. I whispered it out loud, like saying it might somehow change what I was seeing. Charles Harris. It sounded foreign now. Distant. As if I were reading about someone else's husband, not mine. I tried to make sense of it. Maybe it was an old client. Maybe Charles helped this woman and listed his name temporarily for legal reasons. He was an immigration attorney, after all. He dealt with families in complicated situations all the time. That had to be it. It had to be. Because anything else was unthinkable. Still, something in my chest kept tightening. I clicked another file. A letter appeared, short, written in Spanish first, then translated below. Thank you, Charles, for helping us again. Eli keeps asking when you'll visit. He misses you. So do I. Maria. I froze. Visit. I scrolled down. Attached was a photograph. Charles stood beside a young boy, maybe 9 years old. They were outside somewhere bright, maybe a park or a beach. The boy's hair caught the light, brown and soft, his smile wide and free. And Charles, my Charles, was laughing. Not the polite smile he gave in family photos. This was different. Easy, real, alive. I couldn't breathe. It felt like my stomach had been pulled inside out. The coffee mug beside me trembled in my hand before I even realized I was shaking. I slammed the laptop shut. Stop, I whispered. Just stop. But you can't unsee the truth. You can't unknow what's already burned into you. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the dark, staring at the safe across the room. It used to be a symbol of his discipline, his legacy. Now it looked like a tomb, heavy, silent, full of things meant to stay buried. By morning, I decided I needed to talk to someone. Not a friend, not a lawyer, my son. David. He came by around 10, coffee in one hand, his phone in the other, still half distracted by work. Morning, Mom, he said, placing his cup on the counter. You okay? You look like you haven't slept. I hesitated. David, we need to talk about your father. He looked up, immediately concerned. What about him? I found something, I said quietly. In the safe. He frowned. What do you mean, found something? I walked to the kitchen table and placed the laptop there, slowly lifting the lid. I opened the folder, clicked the file, and turned the screen toward him. At first, he didn't react. Then his brows furrowed. What is this? Just read it, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. He scanned the document. Then his eyes snapped to me. This has to be a mistake. I thought so too, I said. But there's more. Letters. Photos. I clicked one. The picture of Charles and the boy filled the screen. David's face went pale. That's Dad. He stared at the photo for a long time, then whispered, "Who's the kid?" I swallowed hard. "His name's Eli." He looked at me like I'd just betrayed him. "Are you saying Dad had a child?" "I don't know," I whispered. "But..." He stepped back. "You don't know? You found a birth certificate, Mom. What else do you need?" He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "Dad wouldn't do this. He couldn't. He loved you." "I know," I said softly. "I know he did." "Then why are you believing some random files?" His voice broke mid-sentence. "He's dead, Mom. He can't defend himself." I felt the sting of his words, but I stayed calm. "David, I'm not accusing him. I'm trying to understand." He grabbed his coffee, his hands trembling. "No. You're trying to tear him down. He's gone, and you're making him into something he's not." He turned toward the door. "David, please." He stopped, his back still to me. "I can't do this right now." The door shut behind him. I stood there in the silence, listening to the echo of his footsteps fade down the driveway. The house felt colder. Not just because of the missing warmth of my son, but because, for the first time in my life, I didn't know who my husband truly was. The photo of Charles and that boy still glowed faintly on the laptop screen. I stared at it, my reflection faintly mirrored in the glass. Two faces looking back, one from the past, one from a life unraveling. I whispered to myself, if this is the truth, I'll find it. Even if it breaks me. The next morning, I took the bank receipt from the envelope, the one marked Safety Deposit Box 114B. I put it in my purse, grabbed my coat, and stepped out into the Seattle drizzle. The streets shimmered silver beneath the weak morning sun. It was time to open the final door my husband had left behind. I drove downtown in silence. The wipers moved slowly across the windshield, clearing lines through the steady Seattle rain. Every few seconds, I caught myself gripping the steering wheel too tightly, my knuckles white, my mind a blur. I told myself over and over that this was probably just some misunderstanding. Charles had been a lawyer. Maybe that woman Maria was someone he helped legally. Maybe the birth certificate was part of a case file. Maybe. But deep down, I already knew that maybe was the last string holding together the world I once trusted. The Rainier Bank branch sat on the corner of a quiet street, the kind of place that still smelled faintly of polished wood and old paper. Inside, a young teller smiled politely as I walked in. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you today?" I held out the small receipt I'd found in the safe. "I'd like to access this deposit box. It belonged to my husband, Charles Harris." The teller glanced at it, then nodded. "One moment, Mrs. Harris." She disappeared into a back office, leaving me standing there beneath the soft hum of ceiling lights. Every second stretched longer than the last. Then a middle-aged man in a suit appeared. Silver tie, kind eyes, professional smile. "Mrs. Harris," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Mr. Daniels, the branch manager. I knew your husband. A good man. Always punctual. Always punctual. Always perfect." I almost smiled at the irony. "I'm here to close his account," I said quietly. "There's a safety deposit box." "Of course." He led me through a narrow hallway to a small private room. The air smelled faintly of metal and lemon polish. He inserted a key into one lock, then handed me the other. "You'll need to turn it with me." My hand shook slightly as I turned the key. With a heavy click, the lock disengaged. Mr. Daniels stepped back. "I'll give you privacy, Mrs. Harris. Take all the time you need." When the door closed, the room fell silent. The deposit box sat in front of me, plain, gray, anonymous. Inside, there was a single manila folder and one white envelope with my name written across it. Gloria. Just my name. No my love, no dearest. Just Gloria. I sat down, feeling the chair creak beneath me, and opened the envelope. The handwriting was unmistakably his, steady, slightly slanted, familiar enough to hurt. Gloria. I hid something from you. Not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Years ago, while helping refugees, I met a woman named Maria Alvarez. She and her young son were facing deportation after fleeing violence. She had no one. I helped her stay in the country, but my involvement went further than it should have. I married her. At first, it was just paperwork, a legal arrangement to protect her. But life doesn't always stay in the boundaries we draw. I became part of their world, and they became part of mine. I never stopped loving you, Gloria. Not for a single day. But I failed you by not telling you the truth. Eli, her son, is also my son. He is innocent in all this. He doesn't know everything. If you ever find this letter, please, don't let anger be the only thing that lives on. Take care of yourself. Take care of David. And if you can, make sure Eli gets the chance to live without shame. Charles. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I dropped the letter on the table, clutching the edge for balance. The walls felt like they were closing in. My breath came shallow and fast. For 40 years, I had lived beside this man, shared a bed, a name, a life, and now I realized I'd only known half of him. He hadn't just hidden an affair, he had built another family, another marriage, another home. And yet, he'd asked me not to hate. How could he? I stood up, pacing the small room, one hand over my mouth, as if holding in everything I wanted to scream. The letter stared back at me from the table. It looked so calm, so deliberate. Every word written by a man who must have known what it would do to me, yet wrote it anyway. After what felt like hours, I placed the letter back in the envelope, slid it into my purse, and left the bank. The cold air outside hit me like a slap. I stood on the sidewalk, blinking at the gray sky, unsure where to go. Cars passed, people hurried by, umbrellas bobbing through puddles. Everyone moving forward, while I stood frozen in a past I thought was real. I drove home without turning on the radio. The silence was enough. When I walked inside, the house felt smaller than before, like it too had heard the confession. I sat on the couch, letter still in my hand, and whispered, "Why, Charles? Why couldn't you just tell me?" The grandfather clock ticked. Somewhere, the fridge hummed. And for the first time since his death, I wasn't mourning the man I lost. I was mourning the truth I never knew. That night, I didn't cook. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat in the dark, replaying the sound of his voice in my head, the warmth that now felt like a ghost. At midnight, I heard a car pull up outside. Moments later, the front door opened. "Mom." David's voice. He stepped in, hesitating when he saw me. The letter lay open beside me on the coffee table. He picked it up slowly, read a few lines, then looked at me, his jaw trembling. "So it's true," he said softly. I nodded. He sat down across from me, the distance between us filled with words we didn't know how to say. "I hate him," David whispered. "I hate him for what he did to you." I shook my head, my voice breaking. "Don't, David. Hate won't fix this." He looked away. "Then what will?" I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that the next morning, I'd find Maria Alvarez. and I would look into the eyes of the woman who had shared my husband's vows. The next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets washed clean, shining under a pale gray sky. I sat in my car outside a small apartment complex in Rainier Valley, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers hurt. The address on the envelope was the same one written in the papers I'd found in the deposit box. Maria Alvarez, Unit 3B. My heart thudded in my chest. I had rehearsed what to say the whole drive here. I'm not here to fight. I just want the truth. But as I stared at the door across the street, every word vanished. I finally stepped out of the car. The air smelled of wet earth and lavender. A child's bicycle leaned against the stair railing. My knees felt weak as I climbed the steps. When the door opened, I froze. She was younger than I expected, maybe in her early 40s. Olive brown skin, tired eyes, a warmth in her face that didn't belong to a liar. For a few seconds, we just looked at each other. "Yes?" she asked, cautious but polite. "Are you Maria Alvarez?" I managed. Her expression shifted, almost imperceptibly. "Yes. Can I help you?" I swallowed. "My name is Gloria Harris. I was Charles Harris's wife." The color drained from her face. The grocery bag she held slipped a little in her hand. I see," she said quietly, stepping aside. "You should come in." Inside, the apartment was small but tidy. The smell of coffee mixed with something sweet, maybe cinnamon bread. On the wall hung a framed photo, a young boy holding a kite on a beach. Charles stood beside him, laughing. I couldn't look away. "That's Eli," she said softly. "He's 12 now. At school." The name hit like a pulse through my chest. Eli. The boy from the photos. The boy from the birth certificate. For a long moment, we sat in silence. The only sound was the faint ticking of a wall clock. "I found your name," I began, "in Charles's safe. And then the letter." She closed her eyes. "He told me that someday this day might come. He married you." Her eyes filled with tears. "Yes. It was supposed to be protection. Paperwork," he said. "He was helping me and Eli stay in the country. But somewhere along the way, it became more than that. I didn't mean for it to happen." I wanted to be angry, to yell, to throw that framed photo to the ground. But instead, I heard my own voice shaking. "You had a life with him while I was still his wife." She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "He couldn't choose, Mrs. Harris. He tried to keep us both safe. He thought he was doing good. He was wrong, but he was never cruel." The honesty in her tone disarmed me more than any denial could have. I looked around, at the modest living room, the stack of homework on the coffee table, a small pair of sneakers by the door. There was no luxury here, no deception for profit. Just a woman and a child surviving. "You loved him," I said. She nodded. "In my own way, yes. But you were his heart. He talked about you more than you can imagine." That broke me. The tears came quietly, shaking my shoulders as I covered my face. Maria sat still for a moment, then slid a box of tissues across the table without a word. When I could finally speak, I whispered, "He asked me not to hate you. I don't know if I can do that yet." "I don't blame you," she said. "But please don't hate Eli. He doesn't know." We sat there a long time, two women connected by the same man and the same heartbreak. When I stood to leave, she followed me to the door. "Would you like to meet him?" she asked softly. "Not today, maybe. But someday." I hesitated. "I don't know if I'm ready," I said. "But maybe one day." Outside, the clouds had parted slightly. Thin rays of sunlight stretched through the mist. As I walked to my car, I looked back once. Maria stood in the doorway, watching me, not as a rival, but as a mirror of my own loss. Driving home, I didn't turn on the radio again. But this time, my silence felt different, not empty but full of echoes. Charles's voice, Maria's tears, the sound of that little boy's laughter I had never heard but somehow could imagine. When I reached home, David was waiting on the porch. His arms were crossed, his face tense. "Well?" he asked. "Did you find her?" "Yes." "And?" I met his eyes. "It's worse than we thought. But it's not evil. It's human." He looked confused, almost angry. "Human? Mom, he lied to us. He lied to you." "Yes," I said. "And he also saved them. He made a mess of it, but he was trying to save them." David shook his head, unable to speak. I walked past him, clutching the letter in my hand. That night, I placed it back into the safe, not to hide it, but to keep it safe from anger. I didn't know what would happen next. All I knew was that some truths are too heavy to carry alone. And that maybe, just maybe, healing wasn't about forgiveness yet. It was about facing the ghosts and deciding to breathe anyway. 3 days passed before I heard from Maria again. Her message came quietly, without pretense, just a short text. "Eli would like to meet you. Only if you're ready." I read it twice, sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee going cold. Outside, the morning light filtered through the window blinds, streaking across the table like faint brushstrokes of gold. I could almost hear Charles's voice again. "Some things can't stay hidden forever, Gloria." David walked in, still half asleep, scrolling through his phone. "You're up early." "I couldn't sleep," I said. "Maria texted me." His head shot up. "What? What does she want now?" I slid the phone across the table. "She says Eli wants to meet me." He stared at the message, then scoffed. "You're not actually considering that, are you? Mom, that's his son. The proof of everything he did to you." I sighed. "I know. But he's also a child, David. None of this is his fault." David rubbed his temples, exhaling hard. "You don't have to play saint, Mom. He lied to you. He built another life." "I'm not doing this for Charles," I said quietly. "I'm doing this for me. I need to see the truth for myself, not just the pain." He looked at me for a long moment, his jaw tight, his eyes a mix of anger and disbelief. "If you go, I'm going with you." I didn't argue. I was too tired to fight. We met Maria and Eli at a small cafe near the waterfront. The rain had stopped, but the streets still glistened, reflecting the gray sky like liquid silver. When we walked in, Maria was already there. Sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. Beside her sat a boy, 12, maybe 13, with light brown hair and deep, curious eyes. The moment I saw him, my breath caught in my throat. He had Charles's smile. The same dimple on the left cheek. The same quiet confidence. For a moment, I forgot how to move. Maria stood. "Gloria. David. Thank you for coming." Eli rose too, polite, uncertain. "Hi," he said softly. I managed a small smile. "Hi, Eli." We sat down. The air was thick with something fragile, not tension exactly, but the weight of all that was unspoken. Eli's eyes darted between me and David. "My mom said you were friends with my dad." Friends. The word nearly broke me. But Maria's hand gently touched his shoulder, as if warning him that the truth was more complicated. "Yes," I said finally. "I knew him very well." He nodded, then reached into his backpack. "I brought this." He slid a photo across the table, a school picture of him and Charles, standing beside a science fair poster that read the solar system. "He helped me build it," Eli said proudly. He said Saturn was his favorite because of the rings. A lump rose in my throat. Mine too, I whispered. David shifted beside me, silent. His fingers tapped against the table, restless, uneasy. Eli looked at him curiously. Are you my brother? David froze. Maria inhaled sharply. Eli. But David spoke first. Yeah, he said flatly. Guess that's one way to put it. The boy's eyes lit up, innocent, unburdened. Cool. David stood abruptly. I need some air. He walked out without another word. I started to follow, but Maria stopped me. Let him breathe. Through the window, I could see David standing near the water, his hands on his hips, staring at the horizon. Eli fidgeted with the photo, sensing the storm he didn't cause but could feel around him. Your father loved you very much, I said softly. He looked up at me. He talked about you too. That caught me off guard. He did. Eli nodded. He said you were kind. That you made the best cornbread in the world. I laughed before I could stop myself, a quiet, shaky laugh that hurt and healed all at once. He told you that? Eli smiled. He said he missed your cooking. I swallowed hard, blinking back tears. Thank you, Eli. Outside, I found David leaning against the railing, the wind tugging at his jacket. He didn't look at me when he said, he looks just like Dad. I know. He gets to walk around with that face, he muttered, his voice cracking. He gets to be the part of Dad that we lost. I stepped closer, resting a hand on his shoulder. He's not the reason we lost him, David. Your father made that choice. He turned, eyes red. I can't forgive him. You don't have to, I said softly. But don't let him take your peace too. He let out a long breath, shaking his head. You're stronger than I am, Mom. No, I whispered. I just got tired of being angry. A few days later, Maria sent me a photo, Eli standing at his school auditorium, holding a blue ribbon that said Science Fair second place. He looked proud. Alive. Happy. She added a short message. He wanted you to see this. He said you'd be proud. I showed it to David. He stared at it for a moment, then sighed. He did good. I nodded. He did. Then quietly he said, maybe next time, we could see him again. I looked at him, surprised, then smiled. If you're ready. Not ready, he said, but willing. That Sunday Maria and Eli came for dinner. It was awkward at first, too many ghosts in the room, too many memories sitting silently between us. But then Eli noticed an old telescope by the window, one Charles had bought years ago for David. Can I use it? Eli asked. David nodded. Go ahead. Within minutes, they were outside on the porch, peering at the stars, talking about constellations. Their laughter echoed faintly through the night, hesitant at first, then growing warmer. Maria watched them through the window, her eyes glistening. He would have loved this, she whispered. I nodded. Yes. He would have. For a long moment, we stood side by side, two women bound not by rivalry, but by love for the same flawed man and the children he left behind. Later, after everyone left, I walked to Charles's old study. The smell of cedar and leather still lingered faintly. I opened his journal, the one I hadn't touched in months, and found a line underlined in his handwriting. The hardest truths are the ones that lead us home. For the first time, I understood what he meant. Forgiveness wasn't a single act. It was a quiet decision, made again and again, to see people as they are, not as we wish they were. And maybe, just maybe, that was what love really looked like after all. Autumn came gently that year. Seattle's sky softened from endless gray to pale gold, and for the first time in months, the air felt lighter. Every Sunday, Maria and Eli started visiting for dinner. At first, it felt like walking barefoot over glass. Every laugh, every silence was delicate, dangerous. But over time, the sharp edges dulled. Eli loved helping in the kitchen. He'd chop vegetables, humming to himself, asking me questions about the stars or how long I'd been married to his father. I answered what I could and left the rest between us, unspoken, but not unwelcome. David, too, began to change. He stopped glaring at Maria. He even taught Eli how to use the telescope properly, showing him constellations his father once taught him. One night, after everyone left, I was cleaning the kitchen when I found something lodged behind one of the old cookbooks. A small brown leather journal, the kind Charles used to carry everywhere. The pages smelled of ink and time. My heart skipped as I opened it. Inside, Charles's handwriting sprawled across the first page. For whoever finds this, if I'm gone, know that I tried to do the right thing, even when it looked wrong. I turned the page. Each entry was dated and raw, fragments of a man torn between two lives. April 2011, Maria's papers finally cleared. I thought I'd feel relief, but instead, I feel guilt. Gloria doesn't deserve this silence. August 2013, Eli asked if I'd be at his school play. I told him I couldn't. He cried. I don't know how to live like this anymore. October 2018, Gloria baked cornbread tonight. I wanted to tell her everything. But then she smiled at me, and I couldn't destroy that piece. I'm a coward. I stopped reading. Tears blurred the ink. He hadn't just been living a lie. He had been suffocating under it. I sat there in the dim light, his words trembling in my hands. For the first time since his death, my anger began to soften. Not disappear, but shift into something else. Understanding. The next day, I called Maria. There's something I need to show you, I said. When she arrived, we sat together on the couch, and I placed the journal in her hands. She hesitated, then opened it slowly, her eyes scanning the pages. Halfway through, tears began streaming down her cheeks. He wanted to fix it, she whispered. He was going to tell you. I nodded. He just ran out of time. She closed the book and looked at me. Do you hate me, Gloria? I thought about it, really thought. Then I said, no. But I did. For a long time. And maybe that's okay. Hate is just pain that doesn't know where to go. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. I reached out and held her. Two widows. Two halves of the same truth. A week later, David found us sitting in the garden, sipping tea, laughing softly over one of Charles's old clumsy love poems. He stopped in the doorway, surprised. I never thought I'd see this day. Neither did we, I said. He looked at Maria. Eli's inside? She nodded. David took a deep breath. He wants to show me something. A few minutes later, the two of them came outside, Eli holding a small wooden box. Inside it were two broken pieces of a model airplane, glued back together. It was Dad's, Eli said proudly. He told me he used to build these with you, David. David blinked. He did. That was my first one. I fixed it, Eli said. It can't fly, but it looks new again. For a long moment, David just stared at him, then smiled faintly. Yeah, it does. He placed a hand on Eli's shoulder. Thanks, little man. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was the first bridge across a river of silence. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in Charles's study, staring at his photo. Maybe you did love us both, I whispered. But you should have trusted us to love you anyway. The wind brushed against the window, gentle, like an answer I couldn't quite hear. I closed the journal and placed it back in the drawer. Not as evidence of betrayal, but as a reminder that even the people we love most are human. And that truth, as painful as it is, can still set us free. Winter crept in quietly that year. Frost glazing the windows, fog drifting low over the lake behind the house. Life had settled into something new, fragile but peaceful. Maria and Eli visited every weekend now. The sound of laughter, their laughter, echoed through rooms that had been silent for far too long. Even David seemed lighter, his anger melting slowly into something softer. One evening, just before Christmas, I was in the living room wrapping gifts when the doorbell rang. It was Eli, his cheeks pink from the cold, clutching a small envelope. "Mom said I could come by," he said, shyly. "I wanted to give you this." I smiled and stepped aside to let him in. "Of course, honey. Come warm up." He handed me the envelope. The handwriting on it made my heart stop. It was Charles's. "Where did you get this?" I whispered. "From my dad's old things," Eli said. "He gave it to me before he went to the hospital. Told me to open it when I turned 13. He looked at me nervously. "I think he meant for you to read it too." My hands trembled as I opened the flap. Inside was a folded letter and a photograph. The four of us. Not together, but combined. Someone, probably Charles, had cut 2 photos and taped them side by side, me and David on one side, Maria and Eli on the other. 2 families he had kept apart, forced together now on paper. I unfolded the letter. The words were simple, uneven, written in the final weeks of his illness when his strength was fading. "Gloria, I know you hate me, and you have every right to. But please believe me when I say this, I never stopped loving you. Not when I married Maria, not when Eli was born, not even when I knew my time was running out. I was a coward. I told myself silence was mercy, but it was fear. I was afraid of losing all of you, so I lost you both instead. If I'm gone, promise me one thing, don't let my mistakes turn love into ashes. Maria and Eli deserve peace. So do you and David. You were my home. I'm sorry for every word I didn't say, and grateful for every day you stayed, even when I didn't deserve it. Charles." The paper blurred through my tears. I pressed it to my chest, feeling the ache that had lived there for months shift, not fade but change. Eli stood there quietly, his hands in his pockets. "He told me you made the best apple pie in Seattle," he said softly. "He wanted me to try it one day." A laugh escaped me through the tears. "He said that?" Eli nodded, smiling. "He said it was his favorite thing you ever made." "Then I guess I owe you a slice," I said. That evening, when Maria and David arrived, we all sat around the dinner table. The same table where Charles and I had celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and unknowingly, built a life around half-truths. Now it held all of us, the 2 worlds he'd tried to keep separate, finally sitting together under one roof. David broke the silence first. "He left us all pieces of himself," he said quietly. "Maybe this was the only way he knew how to put us together." Maria nodded. "He was wrong. But maybe this, us sitting here, is the right ending to the wrong story." Eli leaned forward. "It's not wrong," he said. "It's just complicated." We all laughed softly. The kind of laugh that comes from pain that has finally stopped bleeding. After dinner, David and Eli went outside to fix a loose bulb on the porch light. Maria stayed behind, helping me with the dishes. The air between us was no longer tense, just quiet, kind, human. "I think he'd be happy," she said. I looked out the window at our sons, one tall and guarded, one small and bright, working side by side. "Yes," I whispered. "I think he finally is." Later that night, when everyone was gone, I stood by the window alone. The stars were sharp against the black sky, their reflection glittering in the lake below. On the table beside me lay Charles's letter and the photo, Two families joined by one man's flawed love. I traced his handwriting one last time and whispered, "You broke me, Charles. But somehow, you also made me whole again." I turned off the lights, leaving the letter beside the framed photo of all of us, not as a reminder of betrayal, but as proof that even the deepest secrets can lead to something unexpected: forgiveness, connection, and the courage to begin again. Because sometimes love doesn't survive in the way we imagine. Sometimes it survives in the way we rebuild. And that night, as the snow began to fall softly outside my window, I finally felt what I hadn't in a long time: peace.